Good evening and thank you for joining us. Organizers of the Scotties Tournament of Hearts are celebrating a successful event in Thunder Bay, and local organizers are already expressing their desire to host it again in 2025. The Krista McCarville rink had local fans on the edge of their seats all week before falling one rock short in the final last night. But with just 400 spectators allowed inside the gardens to watch the playoffs, organizers want to bring it back at full capacity in 3 years' time. Jonathan Wilson reports.
At Fort William Gardens in Thunder Bay.
It was the dream final for local curling fans, and even though the Krista McCarville rink couldn't quite knock off the two-time Canadian champs, local organizers were ecstatic with how it all played out. Of course, they would also have liked to have had 4,000 fans packed into the Fort William Gardens, but the 400 volunteers, junior curlers, and players' families helped bring some of that excitement to the playoff rounds. And Scotties Vice Chair Diane Emery says their committee and Curling Canada officials were very pleased with how it all turned out.
We're thrilled with how it went. Our curlers, our hometown curlers, of course, gave us some thrills. It was a wonderful opportunity to cheer Northern Ontario on. The fans that were allowed to come in enjoyed themselves, obviously. And I just also want to say to the fans that couldn't come in, we thank you for your patience and your understanding.
The fact that we had no fans definitely, I think, Thunder Bay could have blown it out of the water.
Event Vice Chair John Cameron is also a tourism development officer with the CEDC. The city agency produced videos for the TSN broadcast to help showcase Thunder Bay to curling fans across Canada.
Local media coverage and the excellent national coverage from TSN, Thunder Bay showcased well across the nation. So, from a tourism standpoint, I think, the vignettes and the ads that we ran and all the bumpers and it showcased Thunder Bay well. So, it was great promotion for the city.
The CEDC also paid the $150,000 hosting fee for the Scotties using local hotel tax funding. Cameron thinks the CEDC would put up the money again to host a full-capacity Scotties in 2025. Emery says Curling Canada officials have indicated Thunder Bay would be a front-runner to host the event in 3 years, especially with the ticket sales being so strong before the pandemic got in the way. Despite the lack of fans, the 3 local curling clubs still managed to split $45,000 from the online 50-50 draws. Those clubs would need to get behind another bid, and organizers would also need to secure enough volunteers. But Emery says everyone she's spoken to is anxious to bring the Scotties back.
They are looking forward, hopefully, to coming back to have a full-fledged Scotties here in Thunder Bay, because, as I say, this was our dress rehearsal, and we passed with flying colors. They're very happy, and the fans were great, and we're looking forward to being able to have them come back.
Krista McCarville is still a great team, and potentially they could be around in 2025. So I think the Scotties is still the event that we really want to go for, because just what we did here, we have a great blueprint already in place with what we've done here, and I think we just need the opportunity to have fans in the stands, and and Thunder Bay will really show their northern hospitality, and it'll be a great, even bigger event than we hosted here.
Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
And of course, Avery McRae will have highlights and reaction from last night's championship game coming up in sports. A Thunder Bay man who was serving time at Stony Mountain Penitentiary in Manitoba has died more than a month after being assaulted on New Year's Day. 36-year-old Nathan Ottke was found unresponsive in his cell by prison officials and was taken to hospital in critical condition. Stonewall RCMP confirmed he died earlier today, and the death is being treated as a homicide. So far, no arrests have been made. The RCMP's major crime and forensic identification units continue to comb through security video from the prison as part of their ongoing investigation. Ottke was arrested by Thunder Bay Police in 2020 after he stole merchandise from a local Walmart and then claimed he had a gun when security staff tried to stop the theft. COVID-19 outbreaks at the Southbridge Pinewood Care Home and the Shelter House have been declared over. And as for the COVID numbers at the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Centre, the total number of patients rose slightly over the weekend, but there's one fewer in the ICU. There are 45 COVID-19 patients being treated at the regional hospital, up from 43 on Friday. The number of those patients in intensive care has fallen to 8. The hospital is more than 98% full, while the ICU is at nearly 91% capacity. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit is reporting 146 new cases over the weekend. There are now 283 active cases, down from 317.
There are 49 COVID patients in hospital across the TBDHU, including 10 in the ICU. In the Northwestern Health Unit, there are now 161 active cases, down from 288 on Friday. The 7-day test positivity rate has risen to 21.8%, and there are 13 people in hospital with COVID across the NWHU catchment area.
Restrictions are easing in Ontario long-term care homes, allowing residents to begin taking day trips. The social outings will be a welcome reprieve from the social isolation caused by the pandemic. 4 caregivers will also now be allowed. Sean Leathong has the details.
Starting today, residents in long-term care will experience a little more freedom.
With public health care indicators now improving, we are lifting some of those measures so that residents can spend more time with family and friends.
While long-term care has been the hardest hit during the pandemic in Ontario, effective today, restrictions being eased are the number of designated caregivers allowed to visit increases from 2 to 4, and residents can resume day trips, but they must have at least 3 vaccine doses. And 2 weeks from now, more restrictions will ease. Those are: residents can have visitors 5 years and older, though they must be vaccinated, and the number of visitors at one time will increase to 3. And while the restrictions are only slightly easing, experts say this area must proceed with caution.
You still can get illness, you still can get outbreaks. So this is something where you have to clearly proceed with caution. You don't want to introduce COVID into these settings, because even with these vaccines, this is the most vulnerable population. You got to be careful here.
While the government says that they're taking a cautious approach and making improvements to the system.
One of the things that we heard first and foremost is that this is a home. This is people's residence. This is where they live. And we as a government have to ensure that as we build out the system, we respect that.
Sean Leathong, CTV News.
The provincial election is less than 4 months away, and local MPP Judith Monteith-Farrell welcomes the NDP membership's firm support of party leader Andrea Horvath. More than 85% of delegates at the Ontario NDP convention gave Horvath the thumbs up this past weekend as the party prepares for the election on June 2nd. Delegates voted by secret ballot to either support Horvath or hold a leadership contest. The vote indicates strong support for her platform, which includes a $20 minimum wage as well as $10 a day childcare. Monteith-Farrell says Horvath is very in tune with party members and fully supports her bid to be the next premier.
Andrea is definitely a leader that listens, and she is adaptive to what the party wants and what the membership wants, and so that is a real strength in a leader. We agree that the vision is for a better Ontario where no one's left behind. And in this time when we are really knowing that many people are sort of struggling, we want to make sure that things that we hold dear are actually going to come true. So
Horvath has led the New Democrats since 2009, and this will be her 4th election campaign as NDP leader. Monteith-Farrell says adding mental health supports, affordable dental care, and accessible housing stand among her top priorities for the Northwest. Thunder Bay Fire Rescue crews responded to a kitchen fire just before 1 o'clock this afternoon at an apartment on Royston Crescent. They found heavy smoke coming from a basement window, and other tenants evacuated after hearing the fire alarm. The blaze was extinguished quickly, with most of the damage limited to kitchen cabinets. The 2 occupants of the apartment tried to put out the fire themselves, and one of them had to be treated for smoke inhalation. The evacuated tenants were allowed back in the building soon after the fire was put out. There are some key items on the agenda for Thunder Bay City Council to deal with tonight, including ratification of the 2022 budget. Also, a report will be discussed surrounding the conduct of Councillor Aldo Roberto. The Integrity Commissioner looked at a social media post from Roberto about a truck that drove through a tent at a local homeless encampment back in October. Roberto stated he hoped the actual cause was wind blowing the tent into the truck. That sparked criticism from those saying he shouldn't speculate about an ongoing investigation. Roberto has said he strongly disagrees with the report and will address the issue at tonight's meeting. Also on the agenda is another step toward the Victoriaville Centre demolition. Council will vote on whether or not to award the $1.1 million consulting contract to KGS Group. The firm would plan and manage the $9 million demolition, which is expected to begin in 2023. Local MP Marcus Pawlowski is in the nation's capital this week for his regular parliamentary duties, and he says he's deeply concerned with what he's seen firsthand of the ongoing convoy protests since arriving in Ottawa earlier this afternoon. As the federal government urges Ottawa police to take control of the convoy protest, Pawlowski describes the current state of downtown Ottawa as a war zone. While he sympathizes with people who have had surgeries postponed due to COVID measures, he doesn't share the views of the protesters, saying the current mandates are designed to keep people safe. Pawlowski says there are several MPs who feel unsafe traveling for Ottawa for the meetings, but he remains hopeful things will quiet down soon.
It's not like they inspire dialogue. They're not, I mean, are they peaceful? And people have a right to protest. Certainly they do, but it would seem that what's happening here has gone a little beyond a protest, and it's a mob, and was a mob rule for a while, and hopefully it seems quieter. It seems police are taking some action, and hopefully they're getting it under control.
Pawlowski adds he doesn't blame Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for not meeting with the protest organizers, who he describes as, quote, openly confrontational. Thunder Bay residents can once again head inside 3 of the 4 public library branches. In-person services resumed today after being limited to curbside pickup throughout the latest wave of the pandemic. Alex Flood has more on that.
The 3 locations now available for in-person services are the Waverley Resource Library, the County Park Branch, and the Mary J.L. Black Library. The Brodie Resource Library will remain closed to visitors, allowing only curbside pickup for now, but library officials hope to open the doors near the end of the month. The 3 locations are still not booking meeting spaces or in-person programs. Director of Communities Tina Marinez says even with capacity limited to just 50%, she's just happy to see library users back in the buildings.
I think people are absolutely thrilled, especially people that don't have access to the internet at home or Wi-Fi, in using the computers, in to browse the collections, which is, people's favorite part of just looking at all the different books and what they might want to take rather than doing that on a computer.
And with in-person services back up and running in 3 out of 4 locations, we asked locals how nice it was to be back inside the Thunder Bay Public Libraries.
Oh, it's great. I feel like I've just kind of been waiting. This is one of the main things that I wait for every time we go into lockdown. So it's really nice to be able to be back. I'm looking forward to browsing as well.
For people like me who stuck indoors all winter, it's a lifesaver having someplace to go, because we're still, can't go anyplace, eh? So I'm really happy about this.
Like, I just came in to get the COVID thing, this.
Yeah.
So it was, and then I found out that was free, so that's a plus too. It's missed it.
Over at the County Park Branch, Community Hub librarian Sylvia Renault was also excited to open the doors again, and she hopes in the future they will be able to bring back more of their programming, as it was a big part of their branch.
This location especially, we always had the little ones come in, and we've had to take away all the toys, and that's really sad. So we'd like to expand the services rather than contract, but everything is based on government regulations, so we need to follow those.
Staff at all 3 locations are also offering free printing and lamination of COVID vaccination records. Operating hours can be found on the Thunder Bay Public Library's website. Alex Flood, TBT News.
After last year's local ice racing series was canceled due to the pandemic, and this year's series was postponed by a month due to Omicron, drivers were finally able to head back out on Mission Bay yesterday for their first races of the season. Mitchell Ringos was there.
And just like that, the community favorite ice racing series was back, with 18 racers signed up for this year's season. Fans were not in attendance for this race or will be the rest of the season, as due to restrictions, the event is limited to necessary support staff and volunteers, racers' teams, and the addition of 4 extra people per team. Thunder Bay Auto Sport Club president Gary Adamko says everyone was down about last year's cancellation and there was fear of the same outcome this year, but says they did everything possible to make sure races went ahead.
We just really couldn't see going through another year of not having the sport available to our members and just letting everybody get back behind the wheel and feeling, I guess, that, again, that little piece of normal.
And racers were thrilled to be back out on the ice, even if it meant no fans, especially on a new track and after over a year off. The racers we spoke to said they needed to get some rust off in the first race, but were just happy to be back on the ice once again for the rest of the series.
Yeah, I'm so pumped this year. The track has been awesome. There's some big sweeps in there, so it makes it super fun. And then it's kind of like the family's back here, so it's exciting.
And this year we missed the first couple months. The first month, I shouldn't say couple. But it kind of showed when I went out there. I ran into a snowbank, and it took a little while to get going. I shouldn't have passed anybody. It was the first time on a racetrack, and the tracks are always different.
The season is much shorter this year, with only 5 races in total, which Adamko says was due to the late start and restrictions, but is hoping for the 2023 season everything can be back to normal.
We're just hoping to have the fans come back out in 2023, and we'd like to thank all of our partners that have worked with us over the years and look forward again in 2023.
And after a successful first race and riders figuring out what works and doesn't work on the brand new track, they will be back on February 13th for their second race of the season. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.
Well, if you missed any of today's local stories or you'd like to watch them again, you can find them on tbnewswatch.com in the TBT News Stories section. You can also follow us on social media. Facebook users can find TBT News at TBT News TBay, and on Twitter, we can be found at TBT News _TBay. Well, Fiona, a nice